You are listening to the Mountainside Podcast, and joining us in studio today is somebody that has truly inspired me, is Sherown Campbell. Sherown was paralyzed in 2014 and has made unbelievable gains in mobility, fitness, outdoor activities, and so much more. He has been on my short list for quite some time. It's an honor and privilege to have him in studio, especially with September being Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month. I really enjoyed sitting down, recording this episode with him, and I encourage you to listen to it in its entirety. Sherown, thanks for being in here, brother.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, man. I am super stoked to have you in. Our guest list is all over the place, right? But I think the one commonality that I kind of start, well, the very first thing is I'm a super selfish person, right? So it's like whoever I want to talk to is kind of how I've done the podcast. It's just like, oh, this person's super interesting, or I want to hear this story. But really for me, inspiration, I think, is a big factor in it, right? Like how somebody inspires me, whether they're a fighter, a former NFL player, an outdoorsman, a veteran. You know, we have all kinds of walks of life. We've had archaeologists in, just like so awesome. Many different people. But you truly are at the top of my list for inspiration. When I look at you in social media, and that's how we've formed our relationship. Shout out to Yuli Monster Diaz too.
Definitely.
Man, he turned me onto your page, and during that episode, we were just talking about. We've had quite a few guests that have, I don't want to call them disabilities, but severe, obstructions in their life, whether it's being no legs, and have found fitness and a way to do fitness that makes me feel like I should have no complaints, right? Like I should be on that squat rack. I should be on that bench press. When I see you doing that, or like my buddy Caleb Brewer, jumping rope on prosthetics on one leg, I'm like, I can't even do that able body. You know what I mean? So like that sort of inspiration is so empowering to me for the sheer fact that it's kind of like, what's my excuse, right? Like, so I think that your page is at the top of that list, man. Like,
well,
and that's kind of how,
appreciate that.
Yeah, man. That's how I try to use social media to be a positive influence. And I'm not on it all the time, but when I am, I use it for the podcast and for inspiration. And that's all I try. I try not to go down negative roads in that, right? So I want to commend you on just the positive outlook. And I'm sure, it's proven by your following how many people are finding inspiration in your journey and your story.
Well, and it's been so cool because I know some people have their negative thoughts about social media, but I honestly got on social media. I had a younger sister pass away from depression and suicide, and just catching up with family members and reconnecting with family, I was like, I have to keep, these paths of communication open in case something happens. And then 6 months later, I end up paralyzed. And so still having those lines of communication, being able to actually talk to people, share life with other people when I was like going through something really difficult was really needed. And then especially transitioning home, I felt like I was just doing a lot by myself. And I was like, there has to be someone else out there going through this. And, who can I learn from? What have other people done that have like experienced this before me? And so I just started posting and sharing stuff and like developed a lot of good friendships and a really good community. And I found other people that have gave me great tips, advice, and then now being able to give that back to others is, that was the whole intent of being on social media at all. So I'm glad it's actually helpful for other people and actually serving its purpose that it gave me.
100%. It's been such a positive thing for me in my life, as much as people shit on social media, like you said. We probably wouldn't have the audience that we have today with the podcast. I wouldn't have, nearly the guest list. A lot of the contacts that we've made have been through social media, whether they reached out to me or I reached out to them. Mm-hmm. And I think, like I said before, finding inspiration there is the main reason that I use it. It just makes me feel good when I see, something that wants to, it makes me feel good when I see something that wants to make me be a better person in the back of my mind. That doesn't make sense the way I just said that,
well,
but you can get where I'm going with that, right?
Yeah, I use social media for the same reason. So, I mean, it could be somebody going through a weight loss transformation, someone that graduated college and got their doctorate. I mean, me getting to see other people's successes and overcoming those challenges and fight through stuff, like, that fuels me and pushes me. Like, even if it's not the same thing with a physical limitation, like just knowing other people are out there, like working hard, going through something and achieving something through all of that, like despite those odds, I'm like, it just feels good to see. Like, I kind of love seeing that. It pushes me, motivates me, makes me feel like on the bad side, like I'm not doing enough, like I need to step it up all the time.
Yeah, that's how it's a good little reality check, really. Like nothing is a better reality check than seeing somebody else struggles, because the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So it's a good gauge to experience other people's lives or what other people's daily struggles might be, man. It's like,
yeah. And the hard part is making sure there's never like a point or a reference of like comparison. Like I try to always look at things like, I don't want like what they have, or I don't feel like my situation is worse or better. It's about just making best of like what I have and my tools and this situation, because everybody's going through, their own thing and something different.
Yeah, being genuine on there and sharing your true story too, I think is a huge part of that. No matter what you're going through, right? Like, I think that's super important, because comparison is probably the worst thing about social media, right?
Yeah. And for me with the disability, like comparing to my old self has always been the worst, because I used to be athletic and in sports. And so I'm like, that's the hardest comparison that I had to work on the most. But I mean, everyone else too. Like I see other friends that, maybe I used to beat them in track, and now it's like, they're out there and enjoying stuff, and you have to like let go of so much and just, really have love for what other people are doing and their successes, but then also focus and be happy with what you still have and what you were able to overcome. Because, it's almost like a past life. You kind of have to split that.
Yeah. Yeah, you do have to split that. That's, I guess I've never really thought about going back and looking at that. I have a family member that was injured C4, C5. So I know, this hits a lot closer to home for me.
Yeah, those high level ones are scary, and it impacts not just the individual, but family members, everyone around them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does. It in a much more than I think people realize, unless you've experienced it. Like, I guess this is a bad analogy, but that's how I get a lot of hate sometimes for being a hunter, right? From people that don't hunt, typically. It's never from another hunt. Well, that's not true. Sometimes the hunting community can be pretty cruel, but normally it's from people that don't hunt, right? And I just am always like, well, come spend a day with me, right? Like, and I'll show you what I'm actually doing. It's not like every day that I walk into the woods, I'm getting to draw my bow and put an arrow through an animal and then am like super excited. Yeah. Like, if they actually experience the day with me, it's pretty heartbreaking. Like it's not, there's a lot of struggle that goes into it and not a lot of success. There's way more failure than there is success, right? So I think that applies to anything. Until you've put yourself in somebody else's shoes or experienced it firsthand through a family member or something like that, you can't, it's right back to comparison. You cannot judge somebody or think that somebody should have more of an influence than other, or you have the right opinion, right? Yeah. You really kind of have to be in those shoes.
Yeah, a lot of people tend to find judgment without any understanding. And for me, that's one thing that I really try to work hard on, is just trying to understand where other people are coming from. Because, I mean, I don't have to agree with everything people are doing, but I'm like, I can see why that serves you. And once I get to that point, whether I like it or not, I'm okay with it. Like, everybody kind of has their own self-serving, joy and happiness, or even if they do something wrong, they have their own purposes and reasons. And if you can just find understanding, and, it removes a lot of the judgment really fast. And yeah, the hate for different things in different areas doesn't always make sense to me. So I'm like, whatever that person has lived through and, went through in their life and, decided they're going to go this avenue or they're making these decisions, like, I don't know what they experience, so I'm not going to make that judgment. But if it's helping them, helping their family, bringing them joy, that I can understand it.
Right. And I want to take some of that back too, because 98% of the interactions that I have on social media are positive, or, like positive conversations. Like it's very seldom, but those ones that are negative really, really stick out, right? Yeah. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, they reach far. And I mean, I think since you're putting out positive content and all that stuff, then that's what you get back in return. So those are always like the good things to follow, the good people to listen to. Like, it's amazing because you can go to someone else's page, and if they're talking negatively, it kind of opens them up to that negative gossip and response as well.
Yeah.
And so you just see comments and feeds and different attitudes. And
that's not good for you. Like getting in the middle of two other people's squabbles or whatever, right? Like that's not good. It's not healthy for you. I think one of the coolest things about social media too, I know we're going on a tangent here, but it's kind of a highlight reel, and it's a real way to track your progress, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, I'd love to dive into the story a little bit. I know you've been on a bunch of other podcasts if people want to go listen to the whole story, and I feel like a ton of other podcasts, and I honestly haven't gone and listened to them, but they kind of hit the same sort of questions. So I want to give you the platform a little bit to kind of tell your own story in your own way, and how you want to do it. But for people that are listening to this that may not know you or haven't listened to you on a podcast, we have a whole new audience that's probably experiencing you for the first time. I don't know the severity, I guess, of the injury. So I know it was high in the neck, right? So like a C4 or?
Yeah, it was C4, C5, and by no exaggeration at all, it's pretty much about shoulders, traps down, everything paralyzed, like no motion. I did start getting some sensation back, like about after the first week or two. And by sensation, I mean like I could tell someone was like touching my body, but I couldn't tell if you were like holding my arm over my head or like moving a leg. And so you kind of feel like a coherent vegetable. Like you feel like you're just there. You can't do anything, but you're aware that you can't do anything. And you sit there, and everyone is responsible for your day-to-day well-being. So you're very dependent, needing food, needing bathroom breaks, needing changed, needing washed, the full thing. So it was, very severe in the beginning. And thankfully things started kind of progressing and, taking a turn. But it has been very small steps and very small progress, like year after year. So
that's really the journey that I want to hear, because I think, to put it in perspective, and I don't know the severity, I only know what I know from my other family members, like, once you have a spinal cord injury that's that high or that severe, and I know that there's different levels to it and everybody's different, everybody's body reacts differently to it, right? But just like breathing functions or getting a common cold is really, really bad to the point, where you can't get your own congestion out, right? Because even you have a lot of people die, honestly, from not being able to breathe, right?
Yeah, that was actually one of my biggest scares early on when I was an inpatient, is because I did have a cold. And for people that don't know, like your lungs and stomach muscles and everything, like help clear your throat, help you talk, help you project, so you're struggling to speak. And then when you're getting mucus or anything draining down into your throat, you actually start choking, but you can't cough anything up. And so you feel like you're choking. You feel like you are going to die. And then a nurse or someone else has to be nearby to help. They call it assisted cough, but then they push really hard on your stomach or your sides to help clear everything up and out. And just going through those minutes, like you're in a panic and everyone else has to be calm and, come over and try to clear your throat for you. Like it's not a fun feeling.
Yeah, absolutely not. So I think that there's so many things, that I've experienced that maybe the average person hasn't, with just a close family member,
Yeah.
having some of this. And I'm not even his main caretaker, just being around like on holidays and stuff, I'm around him 2 weeks a year, maybe, so.
Yeah.
So there's a lot.
There's a lot behind the scenes. And with some of the social media stuff, sometimes that's kind of one of the hard things too, is like, I like to share like the success and progress, but some of the things that go behind the scenes, I try to acknowledge it and bring it up sometimes, but then I tend to not share as much because I almost feel like I feel guilty, like it's more attention seeking because I never want anyone to like feel bad. But there's like so much behind closed doors that just takes work and effort and staying on top of just for day-to-day living. And it's a challenge. I mean, the workouts and stuff are cool, but the behind the scenes is probably where most of the workload takes place.
Right. Yeah. It's, how do you feel about, I mean, it's hard. It's always a hard thing to, when you see somebody with some sort of disability or somebody that's had a severe accident or something like that, it's hard as an outsider looking in and feeling that that bit of guilt or sorrow towards that other person. Like, how do you experience that on the receiving end of that? Because I know that can be very different with like veterans and stuff. And like some of my buddies have no legs. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And everybody is like, I'm sorry, thank you for your service. And they appreciate it, but they don't want the pity party, you know, that comes along with that. So I think it's just like kind of, they'd like to be treated like a normal person if they're at a bar or at an event or at a restaurant or anything like that, right? Like,
yeah, that makes sense. And it all depends on the person's perspective. Like I completely get that. And it is kind of split. Like you like the appreciation for it, but you don't like the attention for it. And sometimes I feel the same way. Like I want to be perceived as just normal or just going out to get groceries. And someone might say anything, but at the same time, like I'm leaving the grocery store and I feel like I just hiked 10 miles. Right. So I know I'm actually putting forth like a lot of effort. And so internally, like that's going on. Someone saw it and acknowledged it, but then I just want to be viewed as normal or like I'm not doing something impressive. So there's kind of a tough balance there. Like
right.
I know what I'm dealing with, but sometimes you don't want everyone else knowing that you're dealing with. And with a physical disability, there's no way to hide that. And so you kind of just got to listen, appreciate when people are trying to do something nice and, you know, keep moving on.
Dude, you're as normal as it gets, man. Like you fucking coming up those stairs that's a feat in itself, man. I have trouble on those stairs every once in a while, you know? Like,
yeah, most things, if I go at a slow pace, I'm all right. Or, I mean, even if I have to sit there and take an hour to figure out something, like I don't mind doing it. I don't mind a challenge. So I'll sit there and struggle and fight. I think the first time I tried to get out of a bathtub, my mom was kind of worried because they helped me get into the shower and run a bath. I drained the water. I was trying to get out of the bathtub for maybe 2 hours.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
And she was like, "You all right?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm just still trying to figure this out," because my feet were sliding. I kept slipping. And it's kind of some of the stuff that it takes to figure out. But then once I figured out a method and a technique to do it, then I never had to get help again. So, you know, those battles are frustrating at times, but when you learn how to do it and learn how to push through those things and know that over time it improves, then, you know, you really don't have a problem with those kind of fights and challenges.
100%. That's really kind of a rule of life, right? Like you're going to face challenges no matter what. Just depends on your situation, right? And like if you don't push through them or you have a bad experience, you normally don't learn.
Yeah. And I ran track in college, so like I'm kind of hard-headed in the sense like track isn't necessarily the funnest sport. Like it's discipline for a lot of other athletes. Like you run fast and you run hard over and over again. And
I hate running.
That's pretty much all it is.
Yeah. I was the shot put guy.
Oh, the shot put would have been so much more fun.
The big boys, you know, that played football and needed something to do in the spring. So
yeah, I did 400. So it was run until you're exhausted. And so I'm used to pushing that threshold and then getting tired and then being told to go do it again. And my mindset and attitude's kind of based on that for a lot of it.
You kind of have to. So your background in sports, did you grow up in Colorado or where are you from originally?
Born in Wyoming, spent most of my life here in Colorado though.
Okay. Yeah. Where about in Wyoming?
Laramie.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad played football for Wyoming University.
Oh, no way.
And then he had passed away when I was younger. My mom moved down to Denver. She was much more of the city type, and so she moved away from family at that point in time. But my family's all bull riders and barrel racers. And,
really?
Yeah.
Rodeo cowboys, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, that's wild. We've had a lot of those guys in recently. Cool people, man. Like, it's a cool mindset.
Yeah, and I mean, especially like coming from that type of background too. Like I have aunts and great aunts and grandmothers and everything else. Like the women on my mom's side of the family are very tough. Like if something needs to get done, they're the type that will go pull rope and, do work and everything else. And so there's no complaints. There's no feeling bad for anyone. And that's just the way that I grew up.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, those are good. I mean, there's nothing like that growing up, like being around animals and just that whole mindset is, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's a different lifestyle that probably majority of people have never experienced,
Yeah, we went to a family reunion a few months ago, and I kind of laughed because my girlfriend hasn't seen some of my Wyoming side of the family, and can't remember which aunt it was, but she's a little bit older, and they're trying to get a balloon. She drags a chair over and is climbing and doing stuff, things that you would not want to see, an older relative doing.
Right.
And she's like, someone should help her. I'm like, no, she's going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
They need to get someone's attention. It's, a loud farm whistle blow and everyone, your ears perk up, and
yeah,
it's
man,
cool to see.
100%. Those people are salty. That's what I always call them, just salty,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So what all sports did you play, and what was kind of like before your injury, what was your like kind of physical state? Because I think what you do now, I would consider you a full-on athlete. The amount of time that you put in, your physique, everything is.
Yeah, it's old habits. I did wrestling, football, and track in high school. Ended up mainly just focusing on track just because I'm not the biggest guy. So usually football, they want a bigger person. Wrestling, I didn't mind too much, but once they asked me to start cutting weight, I wasn't up for that because I wanted to keep eating.
Dude, that's hard. That wrestling is one of the most grueling sports you can ever.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Compete at.
Yeah, but once I found something where they couldn't, sit me on the bench or worry about my size or anything else, if you're fast, you're fast. There's nothing they can do about it. And that's kind of where I excelled and stayed with that, got scholarship into college, went to CSU running track for a year, a junior college in Kansas, ended up cheerleading for a year.
Really?
Yeah, and then finished at Northern Colorado with track and cheerleading.
Okay. Yeah, those are all awesome schools too.
Yeah, some of the back and forth was just being hard-headed. I didn't have the grades that I needed, so I had to bounce around a bit.
Yeah, that happens. That was always my struggle with any sort of sports. I always excelled at sports, but grades were always the hard part, right?
Yeah, and I treated sports like that was my job, so that was more of the focus, and I didn't quite get the concept that they are very combined and that I needed to do both to fully, get the experience, so I learned the hard way there.
Yeah, those hard lessons. So were you in school when the injury happened, or were you graduated at that point, or?
Yeah, I had been out of college so I had went to San Diego after college, but it was for my master's degree. So I had been done with athletics in college, started competing in CrossFit and was enjoying that quite a bit. Had 2 kids, got married, house, was kind of going down that whole career path and family avenue.
This was pre-injury.
This was pre-injury. And then so literally 2 weeks after I graduated with my master's, shortly after being married, had a 1-year-old and 3-year-old, went to San Diego to kind of celebrate and was wrestling around with a friend, got in a leg lock and neck snap, just kind of playing around and roughhousing.
Really?
Yeah.
So like jiu-jitsu type stuff, or?
Yeah, he was trying to get me to tap out, and it's just he used to play football at CSU, so he was like a bigger and stronger guy, and I'm smaller, but I definitely had kind of that Napoleon complex where I will wrestle right back with everyone else. And,
yeah.
And he had me good, and I knew it wasn't on any bloodway or anything, so I wasn't going out, so I just kind of kept dealing with it and yanking my head out, and neck kind of just cracked and body dropped and went limp, and so I couldn't yell for help, and I couldn't tap or do anything, and my friends thought I was out. So then they flipped me over and saw that I was still like awake, and I was trying to mouth to them, and they had asked what was wrong, and I was like, I can't feel anything, I can't move. And then so they called the ambulance and kind of went from there.
Damn. That's crazy, just horsing around. Yeah. Man, jiu-jitsu is, or any sort of like grappling sport can be dangerous. I know so many guys with neck injuries, but it's pretty uncommon to have one severe as yours, right? Or is it pretty common in jiu-jitsu and some of that stuff? I mean,
I'm not sure. I was doing jiu-jitsu like a little before that happened, so that was probably part of the reason why I wasn't tapping out or paying attention. Like I didn't have any panic. So when
you get comfortable with like, okay, I'm losing blood in my head, or I'm losing my airway,
I'm
like fine. I'm all right. Yeah.
And so that's where I was with it, but I didn't even think about just the actual pressure like on my neck or on my joints, and so that I wasn't even thinking about it. And so when it broke, I was like, didn't know what to think. I didn't actually get the full severity and understanding of what happened because I had never really heard of a spinal cord injury. Like, you know, unless you're around it or you talk to someone else that's gone through it, like it was a crash course into what that actually means.
Wow. And after your injury, what was your body capable at that point? Like, did you have movement in your arms, or were you completely paralyzed from neck down?
Neck and shoulders down. So I was inpatient for about 4 months of just them helping you, taking care of you, getting you stabilized, teaching your family how to take care of you, and then sending you home. And then so when I went home, some of the goals for me were to get to a point where I was feeding myself like half my meals, so I was still relying on someone to feed me. So I was getting some arm function back, but it was, you know, feeding myself was a challenge, like lifting a fork off the plate and getting it to my mouth was a big task. And then hopefully learning how to do little things to like help get myself dressed. Like those were the big goals for OT and PT when I went home. And, you know, it's kind of scary. Like that's just to help others take care of you. Like you are fully dependent on other people being available, checking in on you, keeping you updated. So it's those small things.
Mm-hmm. How hard is that to go through? I know it's probably hard to explain, but like going from, you know, really in a split second from being able-bodied to then having to have somebody care for you 24 hours a day, you know, that's...
Yeah, it probably varies with the person. For me, it was like a lot of guilt just because I don't like putting weight on other people. Like I like being independent. So knowing that other people were having to do that, knowing my family had like lost my sister and now they're dealing like with my stuff. Like I really didn't like thinking about my kids having to grow up and being limited in what they could do because of my limitations. I didn't like the thought of that. So just starting to work through all those things, like a lot of those things aren't an issue now, but when you're first hurt, these are just the things that start running through your mind. So it's processing, and you're trying to picture your life in this new situation that you're in, and you've never been in that situation, so it is very hard to picture your life being happy or enjoyable at all at that point.
Yeah. Man, you had a lot happen to you in a short time frame. Really, I mean,
yeah,
it's man, I've dealt with suicide too in the family, you know, like that is something that I don't wish upon anybody, you know, like that's rough. And then your kids were super young when this happened too. Like that's, man, anybody that has had children and, you know, knows what a 1-year-old and a 6 month, was it 1 year old and 6 months?
1 and 3.
Did I catch that? Okay. 1 and 3. So, man, the kids are all over the place. They take a lot of work at that age, right? They're not self-reliant. So
yeah,
that's a whole other dynamic, right?
Yeah. It's kind of weird because like with the suicide part, of course you don't wish for anything like that to happen, but I went through that period of grief, like trying to understand like why things got to that point. So it was like, what would I do if I was in that situation? What would I do if I was feeling depressed? What will I do if I'm having like a hard time? So you start processing all those thoughts. So when it did happen to me, I was like, oh, I was just talking to myself about this, you know, 3 months ago. So it almost laid somewhat of a good foundation for me dealing with stuff, which is, you know, kind of a weird, twisted thing to think about.
Yeah, there's that cliche saying that like people say all the time, like everything happens for a reason. I don't know that I believe in that, but I do believe in, you know, facing some adversity or a tragedy or something like that. It's definitely helps you put your own life in perspective.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's just like you got to learn from, you know, your lessons, like whether you're given, you know, a tough experience or hard experience. Like, you know, I don't feel like that happened for a reason to lead me to deal with my own situation, but it's something bad that happened. It was a traumatic experience, and instead of being mad about it or acting like it didn't happen, it was like, well, what can I do with this? What can I learn from this? What can I do to understand it so that I can help myself or others down the road in case it comes up? And unfortunately, it came up a little bit quicker than I expected.
Man, I'm so proud of you for having, I mean, I know we just met, but I'm like just super proud of you as an individual for going what you've gone through and having a positive outlook. Yeah. You know, because I think, and I'm sure it wasn't positive all the time. Like, how could it be, right? Like, you're a human being, but like to turn it around and just have that way to look forward, or something to look forward to. What has kind of been the driving force behind that? Or do you even know the answer? Is it just mindset, or? It's
kind of a mix. Early on, like you were talking about with the kids, that was a huge part of it. 'Cause I mean, if you've ever been around a 1 or 3-year-old, they do not notice like the disability or anything like that. They might notice like sticks or something like that. But if they're having a good day and laughing and happy, it's hard to be upset and, mad at the world when you're seeing a 3-year-old open the windows and be like, it's sunny today. And it's like, yes, it is. It's very sunny.
It is life-changing, man.
Yeah,
it really is.
You have to kind of keep your attitude and stuff in check.
Well, they're a mirror, So like if you have a shitty attitude, it only is going to affect them in a negative way.
Yeah, and so much of their days is just, smaller things. It's playing with blocks, being excited. So I was still able to sit there and enjoy those moments, enjoy them laughing and giggling. Me and my son were going through potty training at the same time. Like, I was getting bladder function back and he's doing potty training. So we're both there going back and forth to the bathroom. I'm like, this is interesting. Like, this wasn't a shared experience I thought I'd be having with my son when he was born. But
yeah, there's so many things, and they're shockingly honest too, right?
Yeah.
Like, they'll tell you exactly what's on their mind. So, man, it's been nothing but a positive experience for me being a dad, of 3.
Yeah.
And I think parents, sometimes this turns into like a parenting podcast a little bit, but I think one thing that I've learned along my journey is just really taking the time to appreciate those small things that they're appreciating, because you can get so caught up with the blinders, like, got to get the laundry done, got to cook dinner, got to get them to sports, got to, do it. You can just go a million miles an hour and just always be on top of whatever you need to do. But like, actually taking a moment, this is kind of messed up and I'm not advocating for this, but what really made me notice it was psychedelics a little bit, like in a very small dose, like a micro dose. And I'm like, why was I hanging out with my daughter on the porch, on my hands and knees, checking out the colors of this beetle, like, like those little things. And I was like, well, it was cool. It was like, I was on this super psychedelic journey. I mean, you're completely cognitive. I can have a conversation, I can drive, I can do anything. It's a very, very small amount, but it made me realize that in those moments, to the point now where I very seldomly microdose, and I don't need it. I can just be like, that one experience where I realized what I was doing was enough for me to bring it back to where I can put myself in that state with no sort of drug or alcohol or I don't need any substance to put me in that state. Just take a moment, take a breath, reset your mind, and appreciate what's in front of you, whether it's nature, a dog, anything that can bring you joy.
Yeah, I heard a cool quote the other day, but it was like, a lot of people are upset just because like we as adults start taking everything seriously, like what God's made for fun. And it's like, we kind of forget just the joy and the joy of playing around, or even sometimes struggling is like learning a new skill. Like, if you've ever watched like a little kid, like trying to pick up a new task, like they're usually not complaining, like, I can't get this, and getting pissed and getting upset. They are repeatedly tripping, falling, picking something up, throwing something at a wall over and over again, because they're just trying to figure it out. Like, it's just enjoyable at that point. And so I had to kind of take on some of that, like with my own injury, like just figuring out how to take steps to crawl, like these things that were humbling, and just enjoy it, screw around, play around, know that I'm like relearning my whole body all over again. And, when you start like looking at things a little bit differently, then it removes some of the frustration and being mad at yourself.
Yeah. I love your humor in it too. Like in some of your shorts, like the I think it was the Happy Gilmore reference a little bit, right? Like you throw that in there. It's like it's not all just there's some comedy mixed in it too, right? And I think your smile's infectious. Like I love that aspect of like you do look like you're genuinely trying to have fun no matter what your struggle is or what you're going through or whatever you've achieved. You're at least having fun with it, right?
Yeah, sometimes I don't share the humor side as much because I have much more of a dark sense of humor. Like if you talk to people that have gone through like a traumatic type thing, like you develop a pretty dark humor. So the things that I'm usually thinking and the stuff that really goes on, like if I shared it, most people would be like, "Oh, don't think that, don't say that," and it's like, well, some of the crap's kind of funny,
right? So we kind of dove off there for a minute, and I didn't really want to go. I'm not steering the conversation; it's a natural conversation. But I think what's crazy to me is how much, because your injury happened in, was it 2014?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going on 10 years.
Yep.
Like the amount of ground that you've covered and what you are capable of now from having that injury to where you couldn't even cough for yourself to now you're on a squat rack or a leg press machine. I see you working out daily. You got rings. I mean, we have your social media pulled up. Go follow Sherown Campbell. It's just Sherown Campbell at Instagram, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we got a link too in the show notes. So open the show notes, check this out, and your physique makes me feel inferior, man. Like I feel like I need to come down and train with you or something.
Yeah, some of my friends give me crap sometimes because they're like, "Dude, you look like you're in better shape than most of us." And I mean,
of course
like,
you are.
The coordination isn't there, but like I've done well, like building some of the muscle back, and with the spinal cord injury, we carry like what's called tone, so it's just kind of a muscle contraction that never lets up, or I have spasms all the time. So like that helps keep up some of my muscle build and muscle tone. So
like you're constantly flexed, or
everything's kind of just really tense, and especially if it's like cold or if there's any type of pain, everything just like locks up. And so like that helps with like some of the build, but then it's kind of nice because it helps with things people don't realize. Like it helps keep my blood pressure up so I don't pass out, helps keep up bone density so I'm not breaking things. And when I fall, it's really kind of nice because it limits injuries because I'm just a little brick when I hit the ground.
Yeah. The human body is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
What it can do, what it can go through. And not only that, what it does in certain things to protect yourself. I mean, that's when you look at knockouts in fighters, that's a protection thing that the human body naturally does. Like,
yeah, it's that broken communication between the brain and body. You'll see their body just go rigid and kick out, and mine does that on a daily basis.
Really?
Yeah.
So I guess what did you know, I guess laying in that hospital bed right after it happened, I'm sure that there was some shock and like, I can't believe this happened to me. I'm sure that there's a ton of that goes on, but I guess to get to where you're at now in 10 years, has anybody done this with this severe of an injury? Do you have a community of other people that you had some inspiration to look to, or some sort of mentorship, or
there's some people that I had reached out to. Like there's some other people that I classify as like walking quads and stuff, so reaching out to them, and it's hard to like really pinpoint. Like I think we always want to find someone that is similar to like where we are or what we're doing or where we want to go, but this injury like impacts people in so many different ways. Like their path isn't necessarily my path, or somebody might think that I'm doing something better on one avenue, but then things are more challenging in a different way. But I did find some other walking quads, and we actually have like a whole group where we communicate and share ideas with, everything from training and relationships to insurance, or how our bodies are responding to stuff. Like sometimes there are similarities and sometimes there's huge differences. It kind of just depends. But having that community really did help a lot, because I was like, okay, well, this doesn't seem normal, but it's normal like for my injury. Or, let me ask them like if they've had these issues, or what happens when their body experiences this. Like, how's it impacting you? How are you feeling? And I mean, a lot of those peers have better information than a lot of times I get from medical, professionals. And so it's been crucial for as far as like me learning and like developing, and then especially mentally and emotionally, like having those people that understand what I'm going through.
If you're not checking out the Mountainside Podcast on YouTube, you absolutely should be. If you like the content that we create here and you want to help support the podcast, please take a moment, subscribe to us on YouTube, and hit that notification bell. I guess at that point, was that kind of the starting point for you to did you set a goal, or do you have a goal in mind? Of what you might be able to achieve, or is it just a day-to-day, like take it one day at a time? Like how do you set that mindset to?
I did for a while, but the hard part now is like with me getting older and I'm into my 40s, it's like some age is starting to knock at the door, and
right.
I hear it from my friends and stuff too, where, joints are starting to hurt or things start deteriorating. So now it's like this balance of like, how much can I gain before I'm just focusing on maintaining and like slowing down what happens with age and going downhill. So there's a balance there. Like I want to keep improving. Like last year I was really focused on trying to get to a point where I could walk without my crutches around the park, and was able to do that maybe like half a mile at one point, and that's the furthest I've ever gone like without crutches. So I'm still reaching for milestones, but I don't know how long my body will just naturally keep going on and keep doing that, because you're getting older, so there's a whole different set of problems that come with that.
With what my personal experience, like, because you don't have feeling in a lot of those extremities, like you'll break your leg and not even know it, right? For a while, or, I mean, stuff like that can happen.
Yeah, I actually had fractured my hip in 2018, and it was probably like a couple of weeks before I got it checked. And sometimes the hard part is too, like, I went to the doctor, and because I'm not walking or mobile, they actually won't do surgery because the risks outweigh the outcome. So if you're not going to get back to walking and jogging, we're not going to take the risk of doing surgery to fix your hip.
Really?
Yeah, so it took me probably a good 10 months just to recover from a hip fracture. And I don't have a lot of room to compensate, so like trying to hobble around on one leg and weak arms and everything else was probably the roughest 10 months of my injury, just because I was so limited and things hurt so much, and the challenges with an additional challenge was unneeded at that point.
Yeah. And do you find, because for me, like the biggest thing that keeps me going back to the gym or doing something on a daily basis, like going for a 3-mile walk or run, or taking the dog for a walk, or going in and lifting, or doing a kettlebell workout or something like that, is how I feel afterwards. Because I always hate going to do it, but it's how I do afterwards. Do you get the same sort of, I guess, euphoria or adrenaline dump or that without having some feeling in some of your extremities? Or
yeah, there's such a huge combination. Like I do better with like routine and stuff. That's more of a mental and emotional type thing, because like if things are going wrong, like having some normalcy day to day like really helps. So like if I set a foundation with, the good things that I know are important, whether that's I have like a morning shake that I do, working out, it also helps with like my spasms and other stuff. Having those good things I usually hit first thing in the morning, and I do it on a regular basis. So if something comes up, whether it's like losing a family member or financial issues or just regular day-to-day life, I know I have some normalcy in those few things and those good things. So that's kind of my foundation for building anything else.
That's a great outlook.
Yeah, and it
just
helps
a foundation, right?
Like yeah,
some
it helps me
normalcy.
manage everything.
Yeah, and it's something that's within your control, right? Like that's always within your control. Like you hope it is to mentally have something to go physically do.
Yeah, and like you said, that I feel better afterwards. So like, I could get a bad email, and like I won't respond to emails, text messages, anything when I'm working out, just because I don't want to mess up what is going to make me feel better and help me like adjust for the day, so I can actually go out and manage whatever it is afterwards. Like if I let those things impact what's making me feel good, or those good things, then it just gets harder and harder, and things kind of slide downhill. It's
much easier, or I find it much easier to battle those things after I've done my workout. So I'm a morning workout person, or and like even in here, I have a routine that I like to come into here in a good mind space, and one of those things that helps me achieve that is, it's multiple things. You know, I try to come in here fasted because I've noticed that does. I have better cognitive function when I'm fasted for some reason. I don't know why. But working out is another huge thing, at least going for a walk, but really
and bow hunting.
Yeah. Oh, bow hunting's the best. Yeah. Being up, like, there's something, connection with nature is huge to me. That's why I named this thing the mountainside, you know, like connection with nature is so important to me, and I get so much out of that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I need to be able to exercise, have some good stuff, you know, whether it's fruits or vegetables or something in the morning, but then also like getting outside, like just feeling the sun, just being outdoors for a little bit. So like the winters get a little bit harder because I don't like the cold and my body doesn't do well with the cold, but
cold sucks, dude.
Just being outside and the fresh air and hearing stuff, and, you know, seeing people still moving on with life. Like, that's one thing that's caught me by surprise after, whether it was like my sister or my injury, was just going outside and seeing that life is still continuing. Like, I'm having a really bad day, but then you look across the street and someone's jogging, having a great time with their dog or kids. And it really does make you realize, like, you know, the world's still moving, life still goes on, like people are still having happy moments. And like that connection with reality kind of gets me out of whatever, you know, deep, dark space or whatever issue that I'm dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, it's been scientifically proven just going out in the sunlight first thing in the morning is so beneficial for you on so many different levels. Whether it's from the vitamins, I mean, sunlight provides vitamins, right? Like, and it does all kinds of things to you cognitively, you know, with chemical releases in your brain that do certain things. Like, it's pretty unbelievable. Just stepping out into the sunlight for 5 minutes.
Well, especially first thing in the morning. It's a fresh day. I mean, if someone looked at some of my Instagram or stories and stuff, sometimes you'll see people when they're going through a breakup posting like motivational quotes and sunrises and stuff. And it's like, I'm not going through any tough time. I just actually like really appreciate
I enjoy this shit. Yeah.
A fresh day, like a new day and stuff like that. So
man.
I mean, I love that feeling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. So I'm sorry, bring it back. We keep diving off here.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're totally good. There's no script to this. So I love that about this as we go all over the place. So I guess from the start of your injury, I kind of want to go through the process of what has gotten you to where you're at today and your physical ability, because I think it's very uncommon for somebody with your injury, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that comes from a couple of different areas. For me, my background with sports and track really helped a lot, because if you do sports, like especially something like track, like you will train a whole season for a small improvement or micro improvements, and you begin off your season worse than you ended last season. So, I mean, I'm just in the habit and geared to working hard for 6-8 months for a small change in hopes
for a fraction of a second off your time, right?
Yeah, in hopes something improves at the end of the year. And that's what I'm used to. So I have no problem digging in for 8-12 weeks for like a lifting cycle, knowing that at the end of it, it will be better. I think sometimes a lot of people get impatient and they want results right away, or they're like, I killed it today, and they want to see, you know, a 6-pack or something like that. And it's hard to keep digging in day after day after day, just having that faith or that hope or that belief that at this end point, something will improve. So I do think I'm good in that aspect. Like, I know it's a process. I know it takes time, like fully understanding like it's a journey, and the journey is unpaved. So there's going to be ups, downs, boulders and rocks along the way. And I'm going to work through it because I have that end goal still. And I believe that end goal is better off than when I started. So
it totally is. I mean, it's showing and proven, right?
Yeah, thankfully. There's still ups and downs. Like, there's things every year that happen, and sometimes, you know, certain things improve and other things fall off, and there's some transitions in there. But overall, I know, and I mean, even if things don't get better, I know I'm in a better situation, like taking care of myself, where if I wasn't taking care of myself, that fall, you know, downhill or that slide downhill is just faster. So like, no matter what, I'm in a better position if I just work hard and push myself.
Yeah, it is definitely a roller coaster ride, or that EKG line, that's ups and downs. I think no matter who you are, like you're always going to reach your peak, but if you don't stay constant, that downslide is super fast, right? So like just muscle atrophy and that sort of stuff, like right from the beginning, right? Because I don't think people realize how fast that can happen.
Yeah, I was shocked when it happened because I'm 5'6", and at the time I was 160, so I was a little bowling ball of muscle going into my injury, and I think I lost almost 40 pounds in 2 weeks.
Really?
The muscle atrophy was, I mean, they say you lose it when you're not working out, but when you're truly not having a connection to your muscles anymore from your brain to your body.
Right, because they're not flexing, you're not rolling over in bed, you're not doing any of that, right?
It was 40 pounds that peeled off.
Wow.
Real quick. I remember the first time, it was during physical therapy, they had rolled me in front of a mirror and no one like warned me or talked to me, and just like seeing myself, like I looked like I had been on drugs or had cancer and lost weight or something else. And it was just 2 weeks, like to see myself in that condition and not know that was happening to my body because I hadn't seen a mirror in weeks. That was, pretty tough to swallow.
Yeah. That would be tough to swallow. That is, that's shockingly fast.
Yeah.
Was that part of a catalyst to kind of like, okay, now I got to start doing what I can to get it back, or is that?
I can't say that I was thinking about what I could do to get it back just because it was so devastating. It was hard to think how to recover from that situation. And they're careful about what they say to you, but when you start hearing words like paralyzed, quadriplegic, dependency, the big things that they want you to get is quality of life. I wasn't used to hearing those types of things. Like, these things are all of a sudden like really important. And I was like, man, I'm really kind of in a messed up situation. It's like, okay, I'm a quadriplegic now. Like, what does that mean? What can I do? How can I help family members? Like, it's just trying to figure out what can I do in this given situation. So I did little weird things. Like I'd offer to carry someone's bag and have them put it on my wheelchair, and I felt like I was doing something. And
yes, why not?
Yeah, you're like trying to think through those things and, work through it. And it's a lot of mental and emotional processing that takes place for months, if not years.
Yeah. What was kind of the first step? I know you said, like holding on to utensils or something, right? So you could help feed yourself. Is that?
That was probably about 4 months after I got home, was figuring out how to do that. And they actually have these wrist hand things where they'll slide a fork into it because you don't have hand grasp.
Like
and
grip strength, right?
Yeah, so like the biceps started working, so I could like move my shoulder, bicep, but my hands and finger dexterity weren't there yet.
Okay. And I'm sure that some of your, or a majority of your journey has also included physical therapy, right? With some sort of experts. Like, did you have to go to them and be like, this is what I want to achieve, or I want to do this? Or was it just?
It's tough because there's a lot of trials and studies out there, and I've had the fortunate experience of being part of some of them. But like with that, they have very strict protocols because they're doing research and projects and fighting for grants and all this other stuff. So it's like there's things that were helpful, but they might have been more helpful, say, if I could do it a different way, and you're not allowed to do that. And so there's a lot of things that you have to cut off, change, or go without when you join some of those studies. So there's upside and there's some downside to it. Some of the good things too is for one of the first research studies I was in, they just harnessed me and just moved my legs manually every day, just hoping something would click. And the idea is to run like nerve pathways back and forth and try to get that connection going again. And it did work, but like with it, you're also coming off of all of your medication, any painkillers, any type of spasm medication, like all of this other stuff that you feel like you need, you learn to go without, or you learn to deal with it. And so that was tough momentarily, but then like a good thing long term, because now I don't really take anything, and nor do I want to, just because it's a neuroinhibitor, so it actually makes it harder to do a lot of the things that I enjoy. But you start going through, studies and projects like that. I also did some where they stimulate the spinal cord, and they're trying to clear that for like use. So I mean, there's regular physical therapy, there's studies and trials, there's occupational therapy, And then you start trying all of the additional modalities outside of that, whether it's acupuncture, massage, dry needling. Like, I mean, you're kind of willing to try any and everything when you're in that situation. So
sure,
I was luckily in a good place. Here we have Craig Hospital in Colorado, and they're
incredible hospital, right?
Yeah, they're one of the best ones. So, I mean, great resources, learned a lot. It's like getting your master's in neuroscience. Like, you start learning things, and then you also find out what works for your body and find ways to apply it at home if you can, because then insurance is always limited, financial resources are limited. So it's just trying to make the best of what you have.
Absolutely. What do you think has been the biggest help to your recovery?
Probably the first initial study, it was locomotor training. So just putting me on a treadmill and manually moving me over and over and over again. Cause that high
it's kind
repetition,
of a muscle memory type thing, right?
Yeah, and it's just the high repetition. Like, the more you do a task, the less kind of bandwidth that you're taking up to like do something.
Sure.
It's like if you were learning to drive a car, like that first time driving stick shift, it's like, okay, well, let me grab the steering wheel. Let me see if I'm in first or second. Let me press on the clutch. You're breaking down all these steps, and eventually you get to a point where you almost feel like you blacked out driving, home to work. You didn't think about the car. You didn't think about the steering wheel. You didn't think about the clutch, the blinker, the brake, or anything else, because it's such an autonomic response after a certain point. So just doing that over and over and over again, that high repetition, it becomes a lot easier for your body to know, like, I'm getting this input, here's the output. Like, you don't have to think about it and break it down as much. So
yeah.
That study I liked a lot, and I regained a lot. It was also early in my injury, but that also set the foundation of like what I applied at home when I started working out by myself.
Yeah, that's, I think, as much like, to take it back to kind of drilling jiu-jitsu. I mean, that's really what you're going for, is like drilling so much. The reason why you drill is you want it to be, once you get into a live rolling situation, you want it to be a natural reaction, right? And I think just walking and stuff we take for granted, right? Like, I don't think like, oh God, I gotta walk up the sidewalk now, it's just kind of a motor skill.
Yeah, and I'm still working through that. So it's like, I'm thinking about pulling leg up, contracting hamstring, taking a step, watching terrain. Like, I'm breaking down all these things where normally if I didn't have that damage to my spinal cord, it would just be an autonomic thing. Like, you'd get so much input that you can just walk without a care.
Mm-hmm. Is there some supplements or like nutritional things that you do to help with, is like nerve regeneration, or I mean, I'm sure that there's got to be something out there, right, nutritionally wise, that you're doing to have the physique that you do, and just.
Oh, well, currently I use like the regular supplements. Like, I have a pre-workout in the morning and then protein shakes and stuff. For my injury, I went into like researching anything that I could. So it was like oats for fiber to help with like bowel movements, blueberries for antioxidants, egg whites and a banana for all different reasons, potassium to help like with the muscle spasms. So you start kind of trying to treat things with like food first, just because I didn't want to rely on medication and everything else. So that I've kept pretty routine like throughout my injury. And then there's a lot of people that believe in all these different things, and there's some that may or may not be helpful, but nothing that I've tried on such a regular basis that I'm certain of, whether it's like different type of mushrooms or some people take magnesium. There's just a lot of stuff, and I'm kind of weird too, where I'll try one or two things maybe here and there, but I don't like to take on too much because I want to know if it actually works.
You kind of do. You kind of have to, like, I recently in the last couple of years had done an elimination diet, and then, to the point to where I was just eating protein, like not even seasoning or anything, and then just adding one thing back at a time once your body kind of reset after like 90 days, right? It was a whole process through nutrition and just what I learned in that amount of time. So I think, if you go on any sort of YouTube or there's commercials, they're out there for medication, they're out there for supplements, they're out there for, just the amount of fitness people that are on social media now.
Yeah.
My feed is just full of them. It's crazy.
And everyone responds to things differently too. Right. So that's the hard part, is like what worked for one person might not work for me. And I'm always willing to try and like learn. But at the end of the day, there's nothing that's cured paralysis, and there's nothing that's getting me out, jogging down the street. So there's things that help in small increments here and there, but there's nothing that's just been like life changing that I can say like, yeah, 100% take this and, you're going to be, in bodybuilder shape or running down the street in 2 weeks. Like
magic pill.
Yeah. I wish that was the case, but
right.
Good old consistency seems to help more than anything else.
I think that's really the thing, is just getting your ass in the gym and sweating, right? Like, yeah, nothing's really done it for me other than that. And what you put in your mouth, I think, is important too, Like,
yeah, that food is such a huge part of it, because like I had heard it before, but then being paralyzed, your intestines are a muscle. Everything else takes time to process. So when you eat something really bad, it's so much harder for your body to break down, to move, to digest, to process. And so, I learned that there's a lot more going on with my intake of food than what I thought it was before. So I've cut out a lot of the crap, and then getting older, I feel hungover if I eat too much sugar and other
me too.
stuff,
Isn't that crazy? Like if I have like a slice of birthday cake, it wrecks me.
Yeah.
Like, will absolutely wreck me because I don't eat it, right? Like maybe at my kid's birthday, if they're like really giving me a hard time, like eat this, Yeah. And my daughter's gotten really into like baking. And she's amazing. She makes these incredible cakes that look better than they actually taste.
And you have to support her, so you have to eat all of it.
Yeah. But she's like, you got to at least try it. I made it for your birthday, like, okay. But she'll also make it like on the health conscious side, so it's not your typical birthday cake. And it's cool to indulge every once in a while. I think that's part of living too. But yeah, man, it's like drinking, half a bottle of whiskey or something. It's crazy how that affects me.
And I've talked about it before, it's kind of hard because I think we're raised where like sweets are a reward and all these other things that we do to treat ourselves. And I got to a point when my kids were younger, like a couple of years ago, where I was like, I'm doing these things and I'm treating it as a reward, but every adult on, both sides of their family are trying to lose weight, trying to take care of themselves, trying to go on some type of diet. So like, why am I gearing them to be in the same situation that every single one of their family members are struggling with, like for different reasons? I'm like, I got to start, making it seem like, you can have it if it tastes good and things like that here and there. But I kind of slowed down on, sugar as a reward for any and everything. So I was like,
100%. Like,
I'm sending them down the same path.
Let's go get ice cream, right? Like after they've done something good, right? Like just eliminate that.
Yeah, so it's a harder path than I want it to be, but
yeah, it is hard too. And it's like every party is geared around some sort of indulgence, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're in college or it's a 2-year-old's birthday party, there's some sort of indulgence going on, right? Like whether it's sugar, gifts, drugs, alcohol, like that's just kind of how we are as humans, I guess.
Yeah, and like for my kids now, the big thing that I'm trying to preach to them and teach them is these things are there, but then having the mindset and strength to like know their limits and know what to cut out and not cut out. Because the hard part is those things are always available and they feel good and they make us feel good, but then like turning that off and stopping at some point is, the challenge for a lot of us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just walk into a grocery store, the first thing you see is just a bunch of stuff that tastes really good and is not really good for you.
Yeah, and I have a snack drawer next to my bed, so my kids are usually like, what are all those things? I'm like, I know it looks like a lot. I know there's a lot of candy over there, but I don't kill all of it.
That whole lead by example thing is really big too, right? Like that's huge. Yeah. Yeah, you can't be preaching to somebody to do something and not do it yourself, I guess. That's hard.
Yeah, they'll call you out fast too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're hilarious. Yeah, they love catching you. They love catching you. So I know that you've done some outdoor activities, outdoor therapy. Have you gotten into that at all through Craig Hospital?
They have so many cool things at Craig, but I haven't done that much through them as much anymore. It's been more just enjoying time with family and kids, and then some random challenges here and there. Like I did Manitou Incline.
Really?
A few years back, but I lost both my toenails, and it was like an 8-hour adventure. Like that kicked my butt pretty good. And then just a couple weeks ago, me and my son did a small incline by our house. I did horseback riding for the first time this year, but it's because we were out camping with family. The kids really enjoyed the horseback ride, and my son did a pony riding. He's like, I've never been on a horse and actually did trails through the mountain. I'm like, I can't miss this opportunity to, go with my son and actually have that experience. So
Yeah.
went and figured out a way to, climb on the horse. Some lady's trying to throw me over the side. Like, we're trying to pry my legs open to get over the saddle. Like, it was not an adaptive center, but it's like, there's the opportunity for it. There's the chance for it. If I can find a way to do it safely, like, you kind of just got to take your chance and do it.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know their affiliation. I work with a nonprofit that is just absolutely incredible. That's primarily based here in Colorado. I think they're nationwide though. But they partner with Craig Hospital. It's called River Deep Foundation. Have you ever heard of these guys?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I got to get you hooked up, man. The coolest thing about the River Deep Foundation that I've experienced, because I helped them with some archery stuff. And shout out to Rocky Mountain Specialty Gear for helping host that on a day when they're closed. And, they're always closed on Sundays because it's a family-owned business and it's the family and they're running it. And if you knew the Clums, they're just like salt of the earth, just incredible people. But they'll open up their business for something like this, right? So they give archery lessons. There's a ton of veterans that are involved with River Deep Foundation that are either suffering from PTSD or there's people with no arms. There's quadriplegics in a chair. There's people that are to the point they have to use a straw to move themselves around. But the best part about River Deep Foundation that I think that I've noticed, like, there's a ton of nonprofits that take veterans or disabled people out to go do activities, but their family's not involved. So how much fun is it? If you don't have somebody to share that moment with, I think. So families are invited, right? So not only are you getting somebody that wants to learn or experience something, whether it's outdoors, fly fishing, scuba diving, archery, they've had guys in sip and puff wheelchairs shooting over under shotguns at pheasants, like pheasant hunting. So they partner with like Colorado School of Mines and stuff to make apparatuses to do, to shoot a bow if you have no arms. Yeah, they'll build a brace for you and like a mouth tab, and like they don't put a limitation on anybody, and their family's invited. So I'm like, that's a win-win for me right there, right?
Yeah, those are two of the best things because it's like figuring out a way to do stuff. But then, for me, my girlfriend has 3 kids at 4, 7, and 9, and then my kids are 11 and 14. So it's like I'm either enjoying activities with them, and it's I know I have to carve time for myself to do certain things, but it's hard to take time away from all of that to do something more selfish. So if I can find ways to kind of combine both,
that's the best part. Like, as much as these people want to go out and experience nature, I think they get more enjoyment out of seeing their kids catch a fish on a fly rod.
Yeah, exactly.
Than themselves, right? But they're actually there doing it with them. So them understanding that concept is so huge, right? Like that's more healing than anything. If you have PTSD, is probably getting enjoyment out of your kids. Like all the veterans that I've had in, like they're some of the most like selfless people. They're more worried about their kids enjoying life and having a normal life, not
and as
hindering that. So
and as adults, it's not just like losing that sense of play, but I mean, I've had that feeling of doing a lot of things before. So with it not being my first time, like you don't get the same enjoyment out of seeing someone else do it for their first time or that big thing. Like having kids on Christmas, like if you're with a bunch of adults, no one like screams and jumps up and down and says, "Oh my God, it's the best day of my life." Like you lose some of that when you get older. So when you get to see kids do that type of stuff and that type of excitement that you just can't replicate and it's authentic, like that's one of the best feelings. So every once in a while you'll get a friend that's never done something and they'll scream like a little kid and enjoy it. But it's harder and harder to find the older you get.
No, it is really hard to find. Like it made me think back because recently my 6-year-old, she's a little schemer, man. Like I'm going to have to watch her, right? But just like the plotting that goes on, like when you you have a friend and you want to have a sleepover at their house, or they're going to come stay at your house. Like there's a whole little bit of plotting and scheming and all this sort of stuff that kind of goes on. You ask your parents first, then I'll ask mine. And then seeing the level of excitement just from a yes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's all right. You know, they thought they won the Super Bowl or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
We got him to say it.
Yeah.
Like I would have said
we're
yes
controlling the situation, right? Yeah. Like it's so incredible. It made me think about back. Like I remember being in that same situation, how exciting that can be.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So yeah, I think experience stuff with your family is huge. That's what I love about River Deep, but you should definitely, I'll hook you up with Bob, man. They do some cool stuff no matter what you're into. They do like blacksmithing, photography. They just have a ton of different stuff that's just super rad.
Yeah,
but
I'm
like
kind of a learn junkie, so if I can like pick up something new,
yeah,
or even if I don't get into it, I just like that whole understanding piece. Like if I can see the depth in something and understand it a bit more, it makes me appreciate it more.
Yeah, honestly, I don't share it much because anything that I do charity-wise, with me having the platform, I don't want it to ever come off that I'm doing it to advance this, right? So I always just try to be anonymous in it and just genuinely go and help. Mm-hmm. But I also get some gratification out of that, right? Like helping. And it's made me a better archer turning around being a coach. Because I'm like, now I know how to explain this back to myself, or if that makes any sort of sense, you know? Because archery is like this, it's a discipline and repetition, and it turns into a motor skill. And there's like so many different ways that you can go about it and do it. But like coaching it has made me a better archer. So it's like, everybody's winning at that point, you know?
Yeah, it kind of forces you to learn how to like break down things and like communicate it, and those little details that you're making sure the other person gets and understands that you just do naturally. It's like, oh wait, I do have to pay attention to this, or maybe I do need to like sharpen these skills, and doing different stuff, like being able to coach other people, like, you know, it gives you a much deeper understanding.
Yeah, especially when it's somebody with one arm or something, right? Like that, it's unbelievable. You have to like try to figure out a way to work, or not to work around, for them to be able to achieve the goal, which is put an arrow down range, right?
Yeah.
And there's no limitation. Like you're kind of learning together. I get so much gratification out of that.
Yeah.
And then seeing them hit a bullseye or something, and then turning around and watching their kid do it, you know, like it's awesome.
Well, it's probably something they didn't think was possible, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I can do this. And then
we've had people straight out in the middle of it just say, I can't do this. And like, no, you absolutely can. We'll figure out a way. That's another great thing about it, is there's no limitation.
Yeah.
Like
even providing that experience to them, though, if they don't do it again or not, just understanding that they can work through something and process it and break it down, and at least trying something new is so huge. Because like for me, that's one of the main reasons why I get to do a lot of different things, is I don't count out like very many things. It's like, I'm going to try and we'll see if it works out or not. Like the horseback riding thing, I was like, I don't know if I'll get on the horse. I don't know if, like literally if I can sit on a horse for a horseback ride, but let's go down there. Let's try to get me on it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like, that's pretty much the end of it.
Being around animals is great too.
Yeah.
Dogs, all that. It's incredible. Yeah. It's, I guess I'm going to take that back. If it's a safety, like you're not just throwing somebody in the river if they can't swim, right? Like they have like track chairs, and like there are some protocols, right? Like it's safety first, but also no limitations. Like, and honestly, there's been times where it's like, hey, we can't figure this out this time, but Colorado School of Mines is here. They're going to go back and come back next month, and we'll have something for you, you know? So you can. It's kind of cool.
And I'm definitely like a calculated risk taker, and not everyone is. So I don't mind taking risk, and it's well thought out. I'm not just doing things blindly or to get in.
Getting on a horse is pretty bold, man.
But some people don't like risk at all, even if it's like calculated. So they kind of avoid anything that could be any potential of harm, but any and everything can cause harm. So you really start limiting yourself. So just helping people work through that stuff and letting them see, like,
you can't live your life in fear, right? Like, you won't experience anything.
Yeah, especially after injury. Like there's a lot of people close off, and, you know, I understand why they close off, but it's like there's still a lot you can do. There's still a lot you can enjoy. You just kind of got to find a different way of doing it. And once you start getting that down, then there's tons of options that open up.
Absolutely. Have you thought about like writing a book on your journey or to help others, or doing, I mean, you have this social platform now, or starting some sort of like a YouTube channel or public speaking or anything along those lines? Do you have anything in the works coming up there?
I've thought of different things at different times for different reasons. As far as like writing, I'm kind of weird. Like I want to get to a point where it's like this happy ending and life just kind of keeps throwing crap like here and there. So I'm like, I can't end it that way.
Right.
But no, it would be cool to get to that point at some point in time. I don't do any like professional, like motivational speaking, but I do help with like research projects and spinal cord injury community stuff. And that's been pretty rewarding, and hopefully it turns into something more at some point. And a lot of it's just been like navigating life, because like when I was injured and I started living independently, my kids were so young that just taking care of them was a full-time job. And now that they're getting like more independent, then it kind of frees me up to start enjoying things and navigating things a bit differently. So hopefully I can pick up some more stuff, or look into writing or speaking, or even picking up new hobbies like the YouTube channel thing. Like part of me loves technology just because I was a tech guy before I was injured.
Right.
My kids are learning so much technology and devices and everything else. I feel like I have to stay on top of it just so I don't lose what they're getting into.
No joke, yeah.
And so I'm always like learning there, and I just need to take time to kind of really dive deep and understand something with more of like an intention and purpose, more than just like a hobby. And you know, I still haven't quite found that yet. I'm kind of dabbling in it. And
well, I mean, your fitness, that sort of discipline, you know, in itself, and just tracking that journey and what you do now, you're doing that on Instagram. It's incredible. I was just wondering if there's something in the future that you've thought about.
Hopefully. I mean, I would like to do some public speaking and just kind of share, because it's been hard, because I never did this for the purpose of like getting something out of it. So getting something out of it, I feel like I start losing that, because I've just genuinely have done it to like help other people and to help like motivate myself, and, you know, my own selfish way of documenting progress and seeing where I was last year compared to this year, and like having a community so I can get through day-to-day things, where now it's like life is good enough and things are stable enough where if I can get something out of it, I don't want to lose anything that like I've done for good purposes.
Yeah. And I don't think you should think about it that way, as like woe is me type of mentality. I think the philosophy that I've taken is just with everything is if there's more than 3 people winning in the situation, it's a green light for me, man. Like, you know, that's why I've had certain people on the podcast, or I'm not afraid to ask certain guests or whatever. It's like the sponsors are happy with it. I'm happy with it. I'm having a genuine conversation. I'm learning something. I'm getting something out of it. Hopefully my guest is. Hopefully I'm forming a new relationship or a friendship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if 3 people are winning in that situation, I just named 5 or 6, then it's positive, dude. Just do it, you know, and like be that guy on the platform, be that guy on the pedestal. I have had a really hard time with that. But I've just kind of opened up to it now. It's like, I'm just going to be genuine, be myself, nothing fake. And if you like it, you like it. If not, you know,
and
I'm
like,
kind of okay with it.
Not getting anything out of it. That's been kind of one of the nice things, though, because I know there's no penalty.
There's nothing hanging over your head.
Yeah,
right?
I can post whatever I want, say whatever I want. Like there's no obligation for me to do anything at any point in time. So like I will lose that aspect of it, but you know, I do want to get to some type of point. No, I think you can
still kind of keep that, though.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're doing anything wrong. Like, I genuinely don't go out and do anything mischievous or behind anybody's back, or like, I think if you're a genuine person and you're not trying to do anything shady, I don't think you will get in trouble.
Yeah.
As long as you're honest.
Yeah.
And don't apologize for everybody that gets pissed off, you know? Like, if I apologize to everybody that was pissed off at me, I wouldn't have any time to do anything else. You know what I mean? Like,
definitely.
I just don't apologize anymore. That was a hard lesson for me to learn, because I want to make I am a people pleaser, I guess. I want to make everybody happy. I want to make everybody feel good, whether they're old, young, sick, not, whatever. I just want everybody to have a good time and be, just be in the best situation that they can be around me, right? Like, I want to be a positive light.
Yeah, and for you, that must be really hard with, like, having a podcast and knowing people pick apart everything we say these days.
Yeah. No, it was hard because there's people out there that just live in a negative bubble, and it's not very many. Like I said, 99% of the interaction I've had are always positive.
Yeah.
There's that 1% that's out there, and the YouTube comments or the Instagram comments or a DM or something like that will, say, I don't agree with what you said. Like, the worst is getting a message that's genuine, like, hey, I don't agree with what you said, and this is why, and somebody sharing their personal experience.
Yeah.
And there's been times where I'm like, okay, I can see where this person's coming from, where it's changed my point of view, and I'm okay with that. Like, I think anybody should be open to that. And I appreciate that approach. So I don't ever want that to stop too, because it does, like, keeping people in check is good, right? Like, I've said a few things on here that but I'm also open to changing my mind about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, I guess I never really thought about it from that viewpoint. I understand now. That's my reply now, as opposed to, hey, I'm sorry, I won't let it happen again. You know what I mean? Like, there's just different ways to navigate that.
And it's hard to account for every perspective.
Like, I'm not sorry anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I said it. I'll live with it. Yeah, I've changed my mind. I'll publicly tell you I've changed my mind. Just be genuine.
One of the hardest ones that I've came across is, like, a lot of people give me a lot of credit for, like, progression or working hard or, like, fighting through things or thinking that I can do something about this injury. And I mean, I have been able to do that, but there's also a large population of people that have been paralyzed that don't really have any chance at recovery. And I feel like, and I mean, I've seen people put out high effort and really work just as hard as I have to get something back, but their bodies just won't allow them to recover the way that I have. And so that one's probably one of the hardest things that's been a challenge for me to navigate, because, like, I want to have pride in the success, and I know I have, like, certain characteristics that have probably helped push me further than other people have gone, and there's people that probably really take advantage of the situation and don't do anything and don't progress. But I know there's that other group of people that, they're living great lives, but the likelihood of them improving is pretty limited, and that's always kind of tough to cover that.
Yeah, that's a hard thing. Like, you have to take care of yourself first, right? And that was going through the back of my mind talking to you a minute ago when I was, like, talking about a motor skill and walking down the sidewalk. It's like part of me feels guilty for saying that. You know what I mean? Like, in the back of my mind. But then I turn around and I'm like, no, it's just, you want to just be treated like a normal person. You want to hear my experience. I want to hear yours. Like, I'm not really afraid to ask you any sort of question that's come to my mind. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think that that's part of it, is, like, everybody, whether you have no injuries and have lived this perfect life in a bubble or not, you're still going to have some sort of adversity that you got to go through, whether it's, mentally or the people are always facing stuff. Yeah. And what it really comes down to is your outlook and sharing your experience with other people, right?
Yeah. And I have friends that joke around, and we don't cut each other like any slack. So
those are the best, man. Like,
some people are so careful about what they say. Right. And if I go out with my friends, they're, like, yelling at me to hurry up and get in the Uber faster. And, like, you can just see people like, oh my God, that's so terrible. And it's like, trust me, they're going to hear my mouth right later too. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I mean, it's just how comfortable you are in a relationship, right? Like, yeah. Or a friendship or whatever. Like, I have a lot of friends with, a lot of shit wrong with them, and they don't get any slack, really. So yeah, I love that. So tell me, because we had Julian, and shout out to Yuli, man, what an amazing human, right? Like, tell me that experience. Like, how did you end up meeting him, and how did that relationship kind of
we started chatting on Instagram a little bit, and for the people that don't know him, he's just like a genuine, like, good guy. So like,
yeah,
the same
you
way
don't judge a book by its cover, man. Like the
Yeah.
gold teeth and the neck tattoos and the former gangster lifestyle, like,
yeah. So just like talking to him, I mean, there's not that many people that are just genuine, straightforward, honest, follow through of things that they say. And so like the same way I get credit for working through disability, he gets credit for, you know, knockouts and fighting. But just meeting a straightforward person, like he said, he'd let me know when he came to Denver, and he let me know. I said I'd be there, and I'm there. Like, finding people that actually mean what they say is unfortunately pretty rare these days. And he's supportive, he's caring, like his relationship with his son, like it's all things that, you know, I try to do and I try to strive for myself. So like that just made me want to like connect with him and get to meet him. And he was out here for a fight, so getting into to see him do his thing in training, I was like, I can't miss that opportunity.
oh yeah, you actually got to go train with him for a little bit, right?
I was more watching than training.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to take any punches.
Same. Yeah. I feel the same way anytime I get onto a mat with a high level. But that's honestly why I've had so many veterans and like fighters on, is they're genuine 99% of the time. They're genuine people, man. Like they have nothing to prove, right? Like there's no
they're not trying to make anyone happy. There's nothing to defend. They're comfortable in their own skin. They know they can defend themselves. It's just like a different type of peace when you're not stressed out about what everyone's going to think or say or do.
100%. Yeah, man. It's so true. Yeah. Shout out to Yuli, man. Just that his whole journey and you know, everything with his son and just how open. I mean, he was just like you. Like having him in here, it made me feel like I'd known him for several years, and it was only, you know, an hour and 45 minutes or however long we got to spend together, you know. It's pretty cool. That's one thing I love about podcasting is like, how often do you sit down and have a conversation where there's no interruptions or genuinely get to know somebody or have the time to ask a question and get the full answer without a distraction?
Well, and the thing with him too that I learned is, you know, there's a lot of things that he's been through, but it's not like a woe is me type thing or anything he's trying to hide. He's like, these are mistakes that I made, and this is what I learned from it, and this is what I'm now doing with it to improve. And like just that type of, you know, learning lessons through life and building and making the best out of it is like right up my alley and something I respect anytime I see someone doing that. Like you could have, you know, you could be a fighter that used to fight in the streets, and then now you're turning it into an actual profession. You could have been a drug addict, and now you're helping people like through therapy. You know, me dealing with disability and trying to help others now, like just knowing that you're actually taking like a challenge and like using that for something more to educate people and either save them from going down that path or help them while they're navigating those things. Like, you know, those are the types of people we really need around.
I couldn't agree more with you. Man, we have been burning through the time. I think we should end it on that note, man. That was a great closer. I really appreciate you coming up, and we'll have to do this again, man. I'd love to have you back on. The biggest thing that comes to mind when I ask a guest to come on is like, would I have them on more than once? So you're welcome back anytime, man. I really enjoyed sitting down with you. Do you have anything coming up or any events or anything that you want to plug before we...
Nothing for myself. I'm actually getting one of my first like speaking engagements at the end of the month, but it's a lot more spinal cord injury and medical device related from medical studies. So it's not like a motivational or much about me. It's much more about them on that end of it. And just getting settled. I just moved like over the summer. So
oh, really?
Yeah, we're still moving boxes around. We're still getting the house in order.
And moving sucks, man. Yeah. Right, Matt?
I just did it.
Yeah. He just moved like this month. So
last month.
Was it last month? Yeah, I'm losing track of time.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm getting life kind of situated, and I know the holidays are about to hit.
Oh,
so
dude.
5 kids in the holidays, it's coming fast.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy in itself, right?
Yeah.
Well, definitely go give Sherown Campbell a follow on Instagram. It's Sherown Campbell on Instagram. Totally inspirational. Dude, keep putting out content. I think you put out content daily. I love watching the feed. Yeah, I love watching the feed, man. Mix some more of the humor in there. You had me laughing a few times. And, dude, reach out anytime. Let's hang out. maybe we can go out and do some river deep stuff together. I don't know if you'd be into shooting archery, but I'd love to give you
I'd give it a try.
Yeah.
Just like I was saying before,
it's
I'm
really
always willing to try.
therapeutic, man. That's honestly why I do it. Like, it's kind of like my form of meditation, I guess, or yoga or whatever, right? Like, it's just that mental loop and that process is.
Yeah, we'll just make sure everyone's out of the way. So,
no, there's a bunch of rules at the range, So
yeah, you might trust me with the bow and arrow, but I'm not sure if I trust myself. So just give me plenty of space.
Yeah, you got it, dude. You got it. All right. Yeah. Open the show notes right now. There's a live link to Sherown's Instagram. Follow him there. Do you have a website or anything? You guys got any products, sponsors?
No, just I have social media out there.
You should have some fitness sponsors.
I'm working. I sometimes work out at Vasa, so they get me like a gym pass and things like that, which saves me money and helps out a lot. And
yeah, shout out to those guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Mountainside Podcast. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, please take a moment, follow, like, subscribe, or rate on whatever platform you catch the Mountainside Podcast at. If you'd like some more information on upcoming episodes, safety tips, access to all of our affiliates, and all the badass discounts that we get here at the Mountainside Podcast, check out themountainsidepodcast.com.